Hello everyone, I'm back with a new video and today I'm doing a self-portrait. Now this video was originally intended for International Self-Portrait Day, but that day has long passed us, so I thought what the heck, I'd just go ahead and get one of these done. Now this is actually the first ever self-portrait that I've done, and I don't do that many portraits in general. So it never really occurred to me to do a self-portrait. But this year I thought I'd go ahead and start doing at least one of these a year, and hopefully I'll be able to do this consistently year after year. Now today I want to talk about the process as well as the program that I'm using here. So I'm using Krita, and I've actually never used this program in the past. I just downloaded it a few weeks ago, and I'm actually pretty impressed with what it has to offer. It's a free program, and it's quite amazing. It's got a very robust brush system, and I'm yet to actually explore everything it has to offer. So far, so good. I have no complaints with the program. It's just been fantastic. Right now, I'm just blocking out everything. So I start off with a very simple pencil sketch, and I don't really worry about the brushes all that much. Now, once I get into the blocking phase, I'm just trying out a couple of different brushes just to see the effect that I get. But for the most part, I like to stick to something very simple, just a basic chalk brush or a hard round. Now, my process is pretty straightforward, just a simple sketch just to get my proportions down and make sure all the relationships are correct. And for me, portraits are a challenge. Capturing likeness is a weakness for me. It's not one of my strong suits, so this is sort of a challenge. And plus, I'm using a brand new program, so I am still trying to get the feel for it. And so far it's actually been very, very friendly. It's user-friendly, very intuitive, and I've not had all that much trouble with the program. I was able to start off with the basic stuff in just about 30 minutes to an hour. Now you have to take into consideration that I have experience using a lot of drawing and art programs in general, so for me it's going to be a little bit faster than if you were just going into this program without any experience. Now my process is simple at this stage. Just a block out with a few colors, map out the highlights, map out the shadows, and then it's pretty much a game of pushing and pulling things till it looks right. Now I'm actually pretty satisfied with the likeness. I've managed to capture my likeness fairly successfully. I could have done a better job, but I just wanted to dedicate about a few hours to this painting. I didn't want to sit and spend an entire day painting this. Now the nose is a little bit longer than it is on my face, so I go in a little bit later and fix that up. So as you can see, just using a handful of brushes, keeping it simple, and the focal point is just going to be the face. I'm going to try and do as little as I can with the hair. I want to try and ensure that the edges of the hair are kind of lost in the background. There isn't a defining line separating the hair in the background. And that way it helps sort of create this focal point that I'm going for. So as you can see, I'm going to be spending a lot of time on the features of the face, because that is the focal point. That's the first thing we're going to see. And I want to make sure that I do it justice. And the rest of it, everything else that's around it, I like to leave it pretty loose and suggestive. I don't like to really define every inch of my painting. So that's just a personal preference of mine. And like I said, I use pretty much just the basic brushes, and Krita actually has quite a lot to offer. And I just stick to something that doesn't have too much texture to it, that will allow me to get the job done. And then I come back in later towards the end of the process with something that's got an interesting effect, and then I paint over everything just to give it that organic quality and make it look like it was actually painted traditionally. And I think by the end I'm somewhat successful in conveying that. So now that I've got the big picture sort of figured out, I'm going to hone in on the features of the face and start to define them a little bit better. And you can see from time to time I keep pulling back and making sure that everything looks all right. And at no point am I zooming in more than like 100%. I try to stay at a reasonable distance. Otherwise, you're going to be noodling for hours and getting nowhere. Especially when I started out, I had this bad habit of, zooming in too much and spending way too much time on paintings. You wouldn't do that with a traditional painting. Now I'm focusing on the features, and I'm also correcting some of the mistakes that I made early on in the painting. And as you can see now, I'm using a variety of brushes just to mix things up and create some interest, make sure that it doesn't look boring. And I'm also using a fine brush here just to represent the highlights in my goatee. So with the hair, I'm just keeping it as suggestive as I can. I'm going to try and get away with as little work as possible. And you can see even that neck is not that defined. Everything is pretty suggestive. Now I'm starting to just indicate some of the highlights in my braids there. And I'm also using some other texture brushes just to create some interesting effects. Trying to represent some of those highlights in my hair. And you can also see me turning my layers on and off just to see the progress. Now, I personally like to use few layers. I don't create a lot of layers in my paintings. And this particular painting, I think I did it over 2 or 3 sessions, I think. So this painting took around, I think, a little over 4 hours, which is a little more than I would like to spend on this kind of a portrait. But again, this is a new program, and I'm sort of tinkering with the brushes as I'm going through the process of painting this. So I think I've done a fairly decent job at capturing the likeness. So now at this stage, I'm going in with the lasso tool and I'm starting to make some of those corrections. And thank goodness it's digital art, otherwise this would be really hard to do. So if you look over to the layers panel, you can see that I've merged all my layers down, and I like to work with as few layers like I mentioned. So initially I've got a lot of temp layers that I'm working on, keep switching them on and off just to see how everything is going. And once I'm happy with the painting, I just merge everything down and I paint like I would, traditionally. You don't have layers when you're painting traditionally. So that's just how I prefer painting. It makes you a little bit more disciplined that way when you approach your painting with just a single layer. It forces you to make better decisions. So I try to impose those kinds of restrictions upon myself so that I'm a little bit more disciplined when it comes to the way I'm painting. That's just a personal choice. It's really up to you. Now I'm starting to just zoom out and evaluate the values and how everything is looking in general, coming in with some of those texture brushes. Now the ear here is not fleshed out properly, so I'm just honing in on this area and ensuring that I'm doing it justice, because the way I'd left it, it was just too flat. So using the chalk brush here, I think it's a dry chalk brush for that 5 o'clock shadow, and I think it does a pretty fantastic job. It's a little bit of the brush doing the work here. Normally, brushes don't really matter all that much, but in certain situations they can really help you make your painting look a lot better. And you can see now for the eyebrows, I'm using a finer brush, and it's starting to all come together now. Continuing to just make really small tweaks here and there. And when it comes to likeness, these small tweaks really make or break your painting. And so that's pretty much all that I have to talk about this painting. Krita is a great program. You should try it. It's free of cost, and it's quite amazing for being a free program. So I would recommend anyone that's just starting off with digital painting to give this program a go. So thanks for watching. If you like this video, be sure to like and subscribe. I've also got a Patreon if you're interested in supporting the channel. I've got a bunch of perks that you might find interesting. So head on over there and check that out. I've also got a Gumroad, so if you're interested in tutorials, resources like perspective grids and things of that nature, then be sure to check the link in the description. And follow me on my socials. Thanks for watching, and I will see you in another video.